Good morning, Michael Leahy here of the Irish Freedom Party. When I look about and see the plethora of pride flags, the various detailed and peculiar debates that we have about transsexualism, the more I become convinced that we have moved into a kind of a post-rational phase of society, or a post-rational phase of societal collapse. I think the effective disappearance of Judeo-Christian values and of Christianity from Western culture is a catastrophe that we haven't fully understood or we haven't fully internalized as yet. And this has happened with significant rapidity in Ireland. Only a few short years ago, Judeo-Christian morality was essentially the underpinning of our entire society. That's certainly no longer the case. I would think, if anything, the two dominant trends in our culture today are feminism on the one hand and homosexualism with its attendant ideology of transsexualism. They are the two dominant mores of our society, in the sense that they are the two ideologies that it is not possible for anybody to criticize. Many years ago, G.K. Chesterton pointed out that when a civilization or a society is in the process of collapse, it tends to move into a dark period. And that dark period is usually characterized by something of a hatred of childhood. And he gave many historical examples of this. Now, the ideologies that I refer to, feminism on the one hand, is really centered around the hatred of children. It cannot exist without the crime of abortion being central to what it does. Abortion, you could say, is the central element of feminism. You could almost use the term abortion feminism. They cannot exist independently of one another. It has been responsible for the cold-blooded murder of more children than any other ideology in history. Homosexualism, on the other hand, has a contempt for children that is manifest in the manner in which it seeks to expose children at a very early age to homosexuality, to the concept of homosexuality. We look at the drag queen story times and so on and so forth, the normalization of sexual relations between people of the same sex to children. This is being done at a time when children have not the remotest idea of what human sexuality is. It has often been pointed out that children have a latency period and a natural modesty during that period when they simply don't understand the nature of human sexuality. And they should be protected from it. Traditional cultures have always tried to ensure that children are not exposed at an early age to overt sexual practices or ideas. The direct harm being done to children by the transsexual movement is of a much more immediate and a much more dreadful kind. It consists of hormone blockers, chemical and often physical castration, mastectomies for young girls, introducing permanent physical damage to people which are not reversible, even when they're very young, when they're often sexually confused in their adolescent years. This is a quite extraordinary thing for a society to accept, and it really is time for us as parents and as responsible adults in the room to cry a halt. One of the saddest things is the fact that the medical profession, very large elements of it, seem to be complicit with this. I think we saw during the COVID crisis, certainly many of us were very alarmed during the COVID crisis, at the manner in which the medical profession, as a learned ethical profession, seems to have collapsed. It seems to have collapsed in the face of government pressure on the one hand, and financial inducement from the chemical and pharmaceutical industry on the other. And there were very, very few doctors who would come out and oppose the narrative, and those that were rigorously attacked by their own medical profession, by their own councils, their regulatory bodies. I hope that we do not see a similar ongoing collapse of the medical profession in the wake or in the face of the trans ideology, which seeks to mutilate, castrate and destroy the physical bodies of many children. The danger is that many medical people will be involved in this, often at very great profit. And we must ask, has the medical profession become something which is prepared to set its ethical standards aside in order to support a very dubious left-wing ideology? That would certainly be a very worrying trend indeed. In regard to the Pride movement generally, you could say that homosexuality has gone from being the love that dare not speak its name, in the words of Oscar Wilde, to being the love that can't keep quiet for a moment, and that seems to be the case at the moment. It has developed a quite extraordinary capture of the corporate sector and of the governmental sector. During the month of June, we see pride flags displayed everywhere. This goes on for an entire month. No other part of human society has a month dedicated to the celebration of its particular ideas or its particular aspects. Could we have a month to celebrate heterosexual families? I think if you were to promote such an idea, you'd be laughed out of court. But somehow or other, we seem to be perfectly okay with reviewing every day in our television screens these so-called celebrations of something that is very, very dubious. Now, the reality is the Pride movement does not represent homosexual people. Many homosexual people are appalled at the cavorting parades that the Pride movement introduces. We have seen how Radio Television Éireann had a special relationship with the Pride group, which seems to have blown up in their faces after they dared to have a rational debate on the whole transgender movement. But you really have to ask, why would our so-called national broadcaster, which we all know has become something of a propaganda station, but it still has the name of a national broadcaster, which is paid for by taxpayers' money, why would they have a special relationship with the Pride movement in order to promote its ideals? In my experience, and I have had experience of the Pride mobs, they are the most authoritarian, the most aggressive, the most anti-freedom, the most foul-mouthed people that you can ever come across when you see them as a group, and when they wave their flags or when they try to close down the legitimate free speech rights of others. In my opinion, they have turned that wonderful flag, the Pride flag, into something of a banner of terror and authoritarianism and high-handedness and bullying. So it is difficult for us to know what to do in the face of this. What are we to do as ordinary people? We must stand up to bullying. Feminist bullies, as we have seen, have ruined the lives of many innocent people, not to mention the countless children that they have killed. And the Pride bullies and the transgender bullies will do exactly the same if we do not stand up to them. We know that the professions are utterly useless. The professions seem to have been captured and seem to have become centers of ideology rather than centers of ethical excellence, or even independent bodies. We can certainly say that of the medical profession, as I have said. I believe we can say it of the legal profession. I honestly don't think that when you're faced with an issue of the Pride movement or the transgender movement and somebody is being attacked by them, I honestly don't think they're going to find it very easy to get proper legal representation or to get a fair hearing in the courts. And well, what do we say about the media profession, the journalist profession, other than it hasn't been a profession for a very long time? So I think it comes back to each of us as individuals. We must stand up to these bullies, because if we do not, they will destroy our society, and most importantly, they will destroy our children. Many people will go away for a quiet life and hope that things will not affect them, but your children are being affected. Even the teachers' organization, the teaching profession, now seems to be online with this, and they're promoting Pride days in school. And you really have to question what the long-term impact of that is going to be on children. We know that none of the political parties, certainly none of the mainstream political parties, are going to do anything about that. We know that they're absolutely online with the whole sexualized agenda of modern culture. And it is extraordinary how, to the extent to which the culture wars devolve onto sexual and gender-related issues. Well, I suppose it's not that surprising. Human sex is at the center of any culture. On that point, you might question why it is that in Ireland, that for so long, and in so many governments, The Minister for Children has got to be a practicing homosexual and an in-your-face, aggressive homosexual who promotes the homosexual ideology. You really should ask yourself, if you think you can trust your politicians or your political parties to look after our children, ask yourself, why has that happened? We in the Irish Freedom Party will stand up to this highly sexualized agenda, this highly sexualized attack against our culture and against our children. We stand for a return to proper ethical norms and proper ethical values. We value everybody within society, and we will ensure that all people have a right to freedom of expression and a right to freely express their ideas and their opinions, and that they should not be closed down by violent authoritarian mobs. We stand for freedom, and we stand for democracy, and we stand in the face of the mainstream political parties who seem to have been captured by the highly sexualized left-wing ideologies being waged in our culture war at the moment. So this is Michael Leahy promising you that if you support our party, we will fight to return to a rational, ethically based society. Thank you for listening.